Hi there, this is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have interesting conversations with LGBTQ entrepreneurs, professionals, and leaders from around the world. If you have not yet heard the first episode with Ray Barron-Woolford, be sure to click right up here to check out that episode for a little bit of historical context. This gentleman has done a lot. And today we're going to have an interesting conversation talking about some of the civil rights work, including a play and a very interesting network has optioned that play for perhaps a movie. We're going to get into that, and I'm going to let Ray tell you all about that. Again, we are not going to be doing a lot of the general overview. So again, if you would like that, please click right up here to check that out either now and come back to this or moving forward. Before we get going, be sure to hit that subscribe button right down below and click that bell. That is going to make sure that you are notified when we come out with new episodes. I think you're going to love every conversation with our LGBTQ leaders from around the world. So thank you and welcome back, Ray.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me back again. Pleasure.
Well, absolutely. We had a really interesting conversation last time. You have done so much from being running in politics and having your life threatened to creating a housing movement and food movement. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually, from our original conversation, you actually have a book out regarding the food.
Yeah, I got involved really sort of briefly in the food bank sector. One day outside my office in London, I found two men in suits going through the rubbish, and I thought, what the hell are they doing? You know, with suits going through looking for food. So I broke my office meeting up, went out to ask these two guys, and they said, well, we've got jobs, but we've got to wait 5 weeks until we get paid, and we need to eat. So we're going through the rubbish because people do throw out decent food. So I was so mortified by this that I got involved with an elderly friend of mine called Barbara Raymond, who was in her 80s. And I said, what should we do about this? And we set up an independent food bank. And within 6 months, we were feeding 4,500 people a month, 6-7 days a week. And it became the biggest food bank in Britain, the largest independent network in Britain. And through the food bank, giving the food was the easy aspect to it. The issues why people needed food and the complications around unemployment, poor housing, mental health, disability, all, hit the fan. And I always needed money to fund the food bank. And so one day I overheard this conversation where a far-right jock DJ was on the radio, and she was talking about why is it poor people are always fat? And so I was enraged. So I got on the radio and said, are you aware, and this far-right jock, her name was Julia, and I said, are you aware that the reason why poor people are fat is because a loaf of bread full of rubbish is 47 pence, or less than $1, or a healthy Swede is £2-3, $2 or $3. If you're on a low income, what are you going to feed your family? The food that's bad for you, or the healthy food which is too expensive for you to afford? And so she said, oh yeah, Ray, you've got a good point, I'll come and check you out. So she came to my food bank, and she was so shocked by the fact that all the stereotypical perceptions she had of people using a food bank didn't exist. Our food bank was full of the working poor, not homeless people, not people with drug addictions or mums with 60-inch colour TVs. These were working people. But she did an 1.5 hour live broadcast from the food bank, and it completely changed her view around food bank use. And I'm dyslexic, and I was so moved by realizing the power of media that I wrote my book, Food Bank Britain. And Food Bank Britain ended up getting to the White House. 2015, I got Christmas Eve, I got a text from Obama's chief of staff telling me he'd given a copy of my book to President Obama. So that was like amazing. And then one day out of
So what year did you start this food bank?
2014.
Wow, not
So
long ago.
not long ago. It's only 2014. And it just sort of spiraled beyond control. And then, like I said, I wrote the book, and then bizarrely, it was not, like one of those things that just happened. The book became a huge, unexpected hit. So a radio station in Marbella in Spain, which is like, one of the most glamorous places in Europe, with this sort of glamorous radio station, discovered that people coming from Bulgaria and the refugees marching to England were carrying copies of my book, Food Bank Britain. And so she rang me up and said, do you realize that your book in Bulgaria is outselling Harry Potter? I said, well, what the hell is that about? And she said, well, the reason is that people, when they come to England, they know they will get a job and they know they have to work for several weeks. But with your book, it tells people how to get food. And of course, when they arrive, they're going to need to eat. And so my book became this unexpected seller all over the world, and it opened up all these doors for me. So I then realized the power as an activist, where I go to a meeting, there'd be 12 people in a room. I could write a book, or I could write a newspaper column, and millions of people would read it. And once you become an author, it opens doors. You're an author. And so radio stations, media commentators, whenever there's anything in Britain about food or about poverty, they ring up Ray. Ray's always got a good quote. Ray knows what he's talking about because he's run a food bank. He's not an activist that talks about an activist, how activism works. Ray's somebody that's experienced being an activism and how it works. And so that's sort of how it moved on. And then from that, I got involved through the radio station. This is how it really gets into my civil rights work. The food bank became so huge, we needed money to fund it. And we couldn't get charity registration because people would give us food, not cash. And you need cash in England to get charity registration. So I discovered this woman called Kath Duncan, who was a civil rights activist in the 1930s. At the time, I didn't know she was LGBT and that she lived in my street where I'd lived in Southeast London. And so I set up a community festival to raise money for the food bank because we were feeding so many people. And then I discovered that Kath Duncan had this story. She kept coming up in little stories and little snippets that I kept hearing about whilst running a heritage festival. And so I set up on this journey to find out who Kath Duncan was. And I discovered that in the 1930s, she was a very beautiful Scottish woman from Fife in Scotland with red hair and blue eyes, but only 5'2", who was so shy she would stand on a shoebox to make public statements, who became a suffragette in Scotland and became best friends of the wife of Sir Winston Churchill before she married Sir Winston Churchill. So she's a really powerful woman. In 1924, she married her husband, Sandy Duncan, who then I suddenly began to realize that the reason she got married was because they were both gay. And in those days, it wasn't lawful to be gay. So they became married to hide their sexuality, to not distract from their politics. And then they moved to London in the 1924, and she became part of the suffragette movement. In 1930s, she was hugely important in the Cable Street anti-fascist movement, the civil rights movement in Britain in the 1930s, the hunger marches. She was involved with the International Brigade, which was the British and Americans fighting fascism in Spain. And so I sort of, she was doing so much. She was involved with the first civil rights debate in the House of Commons in Britain. And she was also involved with so many social injustices. A lot of people we know in history are famous for one campaign or another. Kath Duncan did them all. But where she went wrong, she was LGBT. She was also a communist, and it's never been cool to be a communist. And I think that was really the reason why I really came across her. Not much was known about it because nobody wanted to claim her heritage. And as a gay man, I think it's really important that we have our role models, that we have our heroes. And it's not just about Marvel Comics, it's about people that have done extraordinary things. So Kath Duncan was the only woman after Mary Queen of Scots who was jailed, not because of what she would do, but the fear of what she would say would cause a revolution at the time of the Russian Revolution in the 1930s. So extraordinary woman. And then I found out, of course, she was LGBT. And when I was in Scotland researching her, my book, I started writing her biography, which is called The Last Queen of Scotland. And that led into my civil rights work. But everybody said there should be a play. And I thought, well, how do we do a play? And so I thought, I discovered that the first civil rights legal case fought in Britain by the Council Civil Liberties was Kath Duncan. When Kath Duncan was jailed for protesting it for her civil rights, really? She went to Holloway Prison. She was jailed. And that caused such a national outrage in the 1930s that it led the Council of Civil Liberties to be called the National Council of Civil Liberties because of Kath Duncan, the profile she brought to the campaign. We know National Council of Civil Liberties now, today, as Liberty. And the National Council of Civil Liberties, the organisation that all civil rights movements around the world are based on. And it all came about because of LGBT Kath Duncan. And by rights, she should be an icon. By rights, she should be a household name. Wow. And I've been struggling for years to get her recognised. We now have a park bench in one of my local parks. I wrote my civil rights play, Liberty, which tells the story of how the LGBT story and the civil rights movement happened in Britain in the 1930s, because what people forget is that we all know about Stonewall. We all know about Stonewall. But the LGBT struggle in England under Kath Duncan was exactly the same. She mobilised the trans community, she mobilised the gay disabled people, she mobilised lesbians, she mobilised gay people. It was them that established the civil rights movement in Britain. And it's just crazy that in our schools in Britain, we're taught about the civil rights in America, in South Africa, in India, but we're not told about British civil rights. And really? So writing my play, writing my book, The Last Queen of Scotland, was really about telling our LGBT history that has not been told and not known, because people in England, they all base their LGBT history on Stonewall, which is American. And it's a great and important part of world history. But Kath Duncan went to jail. The illness she caught in jail is a direct result of her activism led to her death. She died. She was a martyr to our cause. And so she deserves to be sort of recognised. And in 1954, when she actually died in a hospital in Scotland, the people came onto the streets in London, in Deptford, in southeast London, and everybody said, how do we celebrate this extraordinary woman? And somebody in the crowd yelled up, the last Queen of Scotland, because she was so glamorous. She dressed like a Hollywood goddess. Really? She was beautiful. She was stylish. She loved drama. She was the ultimate diva of her age. But she was involved in so many different things that everybody loved her. And even in Parliament, they respected and admired her. She was called the Red Herring. She was called the, Kath Duncan. But she always had the protection of Winston Churchill. So even in the 40s, when communists were locked up during the war, Kath Duncan was spied on day or night. She had spies outside her house, which actually made it easier for me to write her biography, because there was so much secret data. So things like notes about what she ate, the people, the company she kept, where she went, was all recorded by the Home Office, by the spy network. And so I had this wonderful data of material to write Kath Duncan's biography. And then out of this, which took it to another level, was that this all came about in the middle of doing my radio station in Marbella, doing this story about the food bank. And while I was in Marbella, they offered me a radio station. They said, look, we really like you. You're a really interesting guy, Ray. Let's do a radio show once a month about your views on the world issues, whether it's LGBT, whether it's civil rights. And so I wanted to do a radio show that told people the news the way I saw it, but in a way that people could understand. Instead of just doing 2 seconds on a big LGBT story, we would go in depth and do like 10 minutes, which doesn't sound a lot, but in radio times, 10 minutes, as you know, is a long time. And so I started doing this, and I discovered this guy called Hisham Al-Amishi, who was a civil rights activist in Yemen. And I'd have him on my radio show once a month to report what was going on in Yemen. And he became so huge because he had such humor and such wit and such clarity in the way he spoke. He got picked up by CNN in America, by The Guardian in England. He became quite a big star. And then out of the blue, he was kidnapped by the Houthis in Yemen and put in a cellar. And actually, he sent me a tweet yesterday. And it's now 3 years ago today, when we're doing this interview, that he was in a cellar in the ground, not knowing whether he was going to be tortured or murdered.
Oh my God.
And I felt guilty because it was my show that had made him, global, Yemeni civil rights person. And so I set up this movement on social media called Free Hisham. And it got involved with the American Senate got involved, the British government got involved, the UN got involved because of his profile. And suddenly the whole world was trying to get Hisham out of the Houthis. And then out of the blue, somebody said to me, Ray, you're so good with all what you do. Why don't you just ask the Houthis on Twitter? And it was said as a sort of off-the-cuff remark. And so I thought, well, why not? Everybody's on Twitter. If you can get hold of Trump on Twitter, why not the Houthis? So I tweeted the leader of al-Houthi of the Houthis in Yemen, not expecting a reply. And he replied. After about a week, I got a reply from Yemen. And it was the Houthi leader direct, and it was in Arabic, so I had to use Google Translate on Twitter to translate it all. And we negotiated Hisham's release on my Twitter account. And I did a deal. I had to write a story, which I would have written anyway, about Saudi Arabia. And we got Hisham out of Yemen. And he's the only one of the very few civil rights people to escape jail in the Houthis part of Yemen without broken bones, alive with his wife and 2 children. Now he's living in the West. He now lives in Canada. He's working with the UN. And they now expect him to be, the West's favorite, to be the non-corruptible leader of Yemen when the war is over. And all of that came about through the food bank. And so when you talk about sort of activism and stories and extraordinary things happening, who would have thought that, a tweet and a food bank could lead to my involvement with the civil rights movement? And of course, coming back to Kath Duncan. And then I felt that, globally, if I have this power through social media, I need to work with other groups, organizations to sort of empower people. Many organizations, quite often it's just one person and a dog, whether it's LGBT rights, whether it's women's rights, whether it's refugees' rights. Quite often there's 2 people and no money. And so I set up the Kath Duncan Equality and Civil Rights Network, which works globally, giving a voice to all these different groups, empowering them, getting them money to help them do what they need to be done, whether it's getting books to teach refugees English in refugee camps, whether it's supporting LGBT people who are having to be secret because being a Muslim, as well as being LGBT and being a refugee, is extremely dangerous. It's about life and death. And giving these people support and directing them and working with the different political networks I have can actually empower life-saving work. And so that's how my civil rights really sort of progressed from the food bank to the Kath Duncan Network. My play Liberty, which is going to be staged again in 2020 with a really big name cast. I'm really blown away by the big names that want to be in the reproduction of my new stage play Liberty. I ended up writing songs. We've written a song called Forbidden Love. We've written Fly the Flag, which are in keeping with the song. It's not a musical, but I found by writing songs, and when you do a play, you then have something more easier to promote the play, the work. It's less political. And then we found that where we staged it in London, children as young as 10 came and loved it because of the music. And so we found that there is a way of engaging people. So now we're staging it in London 2020 as part of the LGBT History Month. And then we are hopefully going to tour it with Pride around the UK after that. And I've had interest from producers all around the world who want to stage Liberty. So it's really important that our story, the British story, like Stonewall and like, Harvey Milk, the brilliant movie by Dustin Lance Black, also has the same resonance with my book, my play Liberty, and my book, The Last Queen of Scotland. So writing, I found very late, even though I'm dyslexic, that writing, it's not how many books you sell, it's who reads those books and the influence your work has on changing policy and making the difference and saving lives. And I can say through my civil rights work, I've saved lives. And
Wow.
There's not many people that in their lifetime that actually know that as fact. And it's something I'm humbled by and I'm proud by. And the fact that I've been able to do these extraordinary things drives my activism, and it drives me forward and inspires other people, because I know that even if you're a disabled person, if you've got Twitter on your phone, from your bedroom, from your garden shed, from your treehouse, from your boat, from even your homeless hostel, you have the power with your phone to make a difference. And people always think the world is so big and there's so many issues. You just got to find your issue, find your strength, and fight with your passion what you believe. And it's amazing what you can achieve.
It definitely is. And talking of us older guys out there, when we're talking about on our last episode, again, folks, if you'd like more information, we're going to reference this right up here. If you'd like to take a look at the first episode where we had kind of some historical context, is we talked about a little bit of our age and, looking at what has changed and back in the 80s and so forth, we didn't have the technology that we have today. And we have tools now to reach people. And one of my sayings that I have is that miracles and magic can happen when you have faith, believe in yourself, and you take action. So whether that is you want to start a business, or you have an issue that you want to help address, like you with the food bank, it's you believed in yourself to some degree, even if that's like, well, no one else is doing it, so I guess I will, whatever that is, you have a sense of belief in yourself that you have the ability to do something about whatever it is in front of you, okay? But the key is you take action. So miracles and magic can happen when you believe in yourself and you take action. So you have demonstrated that time and time again throughout your life. And so one of the things, though, in taking action is writing the book. That must have taken, although you mentioned writing the book, Liberty, that there was a lot of, because she was under surveillance and so forth, that there was a lot of content for you. But how long did it, from the time you had the idea, wow, I think there's something here, starting to, build up the kind of sense of a validation that this is a project you would like to work on, so when you actually started to go, okay, I'm working on this, to completing it, talk to us a little bit about your process.
Right, it was really, obviously being dyslexic, so I'm very fortunate I have a house in Spain. So I went to Spain, locked myself in the mountains for a few weeks and worked the structure of what I wanted to do, the story, how I wanted to work it. And I decided that because Kath Duncan was involved with so many different aspects of civil rights, I wanted to departmentize it. So I wrote a different chapter as a different story. So the Last Queen of Scotland is really a different story in a different chapter. So not everybody wants to read a high book. People will have different aspects of history that they're more engaged with than others. So I wanted to really capture it as lots of different stories rather than one really long tale that might lose people before they got to the end. So therefore it's a book that you can go back to. So that was the concept when I was writing it, that it would be historically important, because people in the age in which everybody wants everything for 30 seconds, you can nip through the book relatively easy to which part of history or which part of activism that she was involved with you want to be engaged with and which you want to reference from. So that was really, really important. And then when I started writing the book, I never thought I'd write a play, but people kept saying, oh, it should be a play, it should be a play. I've never written a play. But then fortunately through the history, the police reports, the newspaper reports, I had the words, I had, the reports. This is what she said, this is what he said, this is what they said. And therefore I could incorporate into my play the actual words. So the actual words in my play, Liberty, are exactly as they were reported at the time. And what was extraordinary was about this book as well was that the civil rights debate led to the first conference, the first House of Commons debate on civil rights. Once Kath Duncan was jailed, George Lansbury, who's leader of the leader of the Labour Party in the 1930s, who was the grandfather of, Angela Lansbury, the big star in America, her great-grandfather. He led this debate in the House of Commons, and it was recorded in Hansard, which is how every House of Commons debate and conference is recorded in history. And so I had the actual House of Commons papers of the actual civil rights debate, which I was able, obviously, to take and use the words almost word for word. And of course, I've edited, so it's not too laborious because the debate was nearly 3 hours. So I've edited it so it's relevant from an LGBT perspective. So it's an actual, the second act of my play, which is set in the House of Commons, is word for word accurate. But of course, I've cut it down quite substantially so I don't lose the audience.
Gotcha.
And so that was sort of quite important. And then, trying to get it published was really, really difficult because it was like a woman that nobody had heard of. I thought, everybody said to me, everybody will want to see a play about a powerful woman and an interesting woman who was beautiful. But the minute they discovered she was a communist and they discovered that she was LGBT, nobody wanted to know. And it was by chance that Dustin Lance Black, who wrote Brokeback Mountain and Harvey Milk, saw my play on social media and recommended it to an organization in San Francisco, a very well-known gay organization, who gave me the money to fund it in London. We staged it in 2019, where it won huge acclaim. I'm really proud and honored at the critical acclaim that it got. But I was still very nervous because I hadn't written. So I'd seen this British actor that I loved, a Shakespearean actor called Emily Cardin. And I wrote her and I said, look, I love your work and I think you'd be really good at playing Emily, playing Kath Duncan. Would you consider it? So I sent her the script and I thought this was my calling card. If she likes the script, then I've got a book and I've got a play. And I sent her the script and she said, sign me up, I'll do this play. And so I immediately had one of the finest British actors playing the role. And then out of the blue, I had this guy called Alex Reed, who we have a program here called Big Brother. And you might have it in America. And he won Celebrity Big Brother. He was married to a famous model in Britain. And he was also a cross-dressing cage fighter. So he was quite a high profile. He wrote to me out of the blue and said, look, Ray, I love this play. I'd really love to be in the play because it would be good for my career. It would take me to a new level in terms of me being seen as a serious actor, not somebody that's mocked as a cross-dressing cage fighter. And he's heterosexual, he likes to see himself as. And so I signed him up for the play. And then when we were doing the play and we were doing the auditions, I had in mind that I would have men play, I fell for the old trick that a play, because it's period, has to have the same type of caricatures. But when I had the audition, the women were so strong at the audition that instead of having men, I cast all the men as women roles. Because when you have a great story, it's a story that tells its story, not the color of their skin or their gender. And so I found that the most captivating people on stage were the women, which was the right thing to do. And it's at this stage that I realized that Kath Duncan was gay. And so I decided to translate her relationship, her husband, Sandy Duncan, to a woman. So I had a woman play her husband within the play, which was a sort of soft touch to Kath Duncan, who would have liked to have had a woman as a partner, not a man, had history been kinder to her back in the 1930s, and she didn't have an issue with LGBT. And so that changed it. So it really changed the demographic, the structure of the play from a period drama, which would be predictable, into a period drama which was very now, and was very true to the spirit of my writing. And so I was really, really proud to do it. And it's extraordinary that the types of people that have agreed to do the new play. So the new play, we have the people, this is an exclusive for you, but among those that have said they want to be in my production in London include a really serious theatre a guy in London called John Moses, who played Jesus Christ in Jesus Christ Superstar in the West End. He's a big West End star. You know, he's not necessarily known in America, but in West End terms, he's very big. And then also, which is interesting, because in the play there's a transvestite character called Percy Duke. You may still remember, but Marilyn, who was a pop star with Boy George in the 80s, wants to play Percy Duke in the play. So really? I think it's really important that when you're doing the play, that it has, instead of having straight actors play gay roles, I think it's really important to be true to the piece, that you have actors who understand the historical context of your work and the struggle, but also you have LGBT people, whether it's male or female LGBT, whatever their gender, playing those type of characters. And so I have, like, you know, lesbians playing, you know, gay men, whatever, because I think it's really important for the spirit of the work. And then out of the blue, of course, as we now know, is that in October, when all this craziness was going on, I got an email from a production company in LA saying they wanted to sign my play Liberty for film production. And I thought, how is that possible? So I just thought it was a scam. So I ignored it until I got the fifth email. And the fifth email was, are you aware how difficult it is to get a play and a structure like yours you know, made into a production in New York and LA, and to get it broadcast by Netflix? And so I said, it got me curious. So, you know, they were angry with me that I'd ignored them. So I replied to the email. I did my homework online. I searched and checked that this was a legitimate production company, and it was Netflix. And so they tuned me in for a really strange conference call. And I'm not a writer, I'm not a producer. You know, it's all new to me. I just go with the flow, and, you know, life takes me where it takes me, and my work, you know, happens as it happens. And I thought I'd be ringing this producer, you know, as assistant. I thought it'd be just like a girl in the office. And when I got through in this complicated phoning system that I had to get through, there was producers, directors in LA, in London, in New York. There's 48 members of the Netflix team on this phone conference call to sign me up.
Oh my gosh.
Liberty. It was extraordinary. And then it was like, we want you, we love the play, and we're not sure whether we want to do a period drama about Kath Duncan, or whether we make a film and then we do a period drama series. And their issues has always been about the fact that nobody knows Kath Duncan. They've got issues, the fact she was a communist, so that's sort of an issue with them. But I'm trying to sell it at the moment on the basis, let's do a film about the British civil rights movement and focus on Kath Duncan. And the communist side is very small, and so it's not, you know, not the focus of the film. And then if that's a big success and it wins Oscars, because we keep hearing about all these women that want great roles, you don't get a better role than playing Kath Duncan. And then from the film, you do the period drama series as the fallout. So that's where we have been at. And then a week later, they sent me another email, and they allocated me a producer to be responsible for my welfare, a producer. So they didn't tell me it was the producer at the time. They just said, we've got this woman who's looking after you. So I had this number I had to ring in New York, and it was one of the top New York was one of the top women producers in America, who was responsible for my welfare, for my work. So, and there I was chatting on the phone to her in New York, and it was like, it was just been, the whole experience had been so surreal. And of course, then COVID hit in February this year. And so, you know, we had hoped this year my play would tour, but it's now touring, as I said, 2022. And the Netflix deal is there. They're telling me realistically it's going to take about 5 years, because you have to write the script, and then you've got all the directors that are good or working for the next 2 or 3 years. So putting the whole production when you're working on a period drama is more complex and expensive than your usual production. So that's where we are at the moment. So I've gone from, you know, food bank to be friends of LA producers to being on your great show. So you know, life is extraordinary.
Too interesting. Well, I will add that if there is an opportunity, one of my interviews, and someone I've been aware of and now know, is a New York Broadway producer. So if it doesn't conflict with the Netflix things, I can put you two in touch. Because he has produced several hit shows in New York, and of course that too is, you know, temporarily shut down due to the COVID and so forth that we're going through as well. But the fact that these things take time, be happy to make that introduction for you. I think it would be something. I don't know him well, but certainly being an LGBT focus, it might be something of interest. Who knows?
It's great. It's a rad. And what I've been very careful with the play is to design a play that doesn't need a stage. So the concept of the play is it works with the audience. So bizarrely, it works very well in a COVID time, which is why it's being staged in London in 2020, because the audience are part of the cast. The way it's designed, it doesn't have a stage.
Really?
Everybody's part of the action. So the play itself is very unique. It uses films. So we recreated the scenes from the 1930s, which we screen in black and white into the theatre, and then we create the spaces so you feel that you're in the event. So we have fight scenes in the theatre or in the community space. So it's very cheap production to produce, because 1930s fashion is still very now, so you don't need a costume designer as such. And we use the music, which works really well, and we have this really, really romantic scene where the two gay characters, and all of the stories in the play are true, the two gay guys are arrested for the 5th time, and they're about to go to jail for 12 years. They've served 12 years altogether. And the song is their arrest. And at the time, the song in the 1930s was the tango. What people forget is the tango was written for gay men, for men to dance together. The original tango was men dancing with men. And
Really?
so with my husband, we wrote Forbidden Love, which is this tragic love song with these two gay men singing and dancing together. And then we project onto the wall at the back the dream of these two amazing Latin American dancers doing the tango in line to my song, Forbidden Love. And then the guys dancing on this film are these two gay guys who are dreaming if only they could put their fingers through their hair and dance the tango together. And so that's how I got, so that the music is, and then because now we have Marilyn who wants to be in the play, we're now writing a unique song for her, Percy Duke Ballad, for the second act. Because when I wrote it, I didn't think the music would be so important, because I'm not a music writer. But people loved the songs so much, we wrote 3 songs for the first act, that we've now decided in the second act to write 3 more songs, 3 original songs. And we feel that gives the play global hits. So even if you have language issues, the action of the play and the way it's staged and set translates, whether it's Spanish, Chinese, Italian or Norwegian. And so I think that's, and when you're a writer, what you want your work to be staged and the story told as broadly as possible. And I think I've done that through my play. And I think what makes it different, because of my history of an activist, I can translate that activism through my writing to be very accurate. And one of the extraordinary things about my play, on the opening night, an old man came to my play called John White, and he was 99 years old. And he had marched with Kath Duncan in the 1930s as a young man. He was 99.
Wow.
And he came to the play, and at the end of the play, the cast all came out, all in their costumes. And I even had Emily Carding wearing the hat that Kath Duncan wore in the 1930s. Somebody had this hat in their shop that they've kept, as a family emblem, as symbol for all those years. And I found this hat and Emily wore it. And they all came out and greeted John. And he was in tears and he was so moved by it. And I said, John, have I done a good job? And he said, I'm here with my comrades as I was in the 30s. And the character portraying the accuracy of the work. We even did things like we had tobacco candles. So when people came into the hall, we lit candles that smelled of tobacco so that people get the feel of the space that would have been when they were in the 1930s. And so we took him through the smell and through the production, the costumes and the banners and the black and white films that we screened, to what it would have been like in the 1930s. And when you've got somebody of 99 years of age who lived that period and who remembered it, and it brought it back so clearly for a man of 99 that felt he was, 19 again, that was, out of all the things I've ever done in my life, that was probably the most powerful because I got it right. And then I thought, Kath, wherever you are up there, I think I've done you justice with my play, with my book. And it's not about how many books they sell, it's the story that it has and the people that get inspired by the Last Queen of Scotland and by my play Liberty.
Wow, you've researched, you've written a play, you have all of the senses going on, you've written so you've got the words, you've got the acting, you've written music, and you even go to the smells. Wow, you have me excited. Now I want to see this. I want to experience this.
We'll have to bring it to London. We've got to get it into New York. I have a good friend of mine called Michael Minicelli, who used to have a partner called Ben, who used to be a producer in New York. He doesn't do it anymore. He runs a big health organization. But it would be great to bring it to New York because it is such a unique type of production. And the reason why we're staging it in London for a limited run in 2022 is really to have big names. And I mean, the main star of the show will be somebody that everybody in America knows. Because what I'm trying to do with this play, not stage my play, I'm trying to break it as a major work. And I think a combination of the Netflix and the staging in London with a very famous cast, with a big star in the lead, will actually establish it as a really important work. And that hopefully will put the speed dial on Netflix to actually bring forward 5 years to 2 or 3, which is what I'm hoping for.
Awesome. This sounds, it sounds amazing. And of course, with all that you have done, it's no wonder that you have put such methodical detail into this. And for not quote unquote having written one before, the level that you have gone to into this just sounds incredible. So I can't wait to see it. Do you have any hashtags or anything else already kind of set up that you would like people to utilize?
Well, yeah, I mean, people can get hold of me direct, obviously through you or through the Kath Duncan Equality and Civil Rights Network. My books are on Amazon or Kindle. Hopefully you put a link on your little show so that people can get the books through you. For Absolutely. My Last Queen of Scotland biography of Kath Duncan or my stage play Liberty. The music is not in the playbook, though. The music I keep separately. People want to stage the play. I'm not in it for the money. I want people to stage the play. People want the access to the music. They can contact me direct. That's how I know where the play is being staged and when, because they have to contact me direct so that I can make sure the work is being staged in a way that's complementary of our community and not some sort of farce or something that discredits my work. So it's important to me that my work is performed, even if it's in a church hall. I don't care where it's performed, but it has to be done with some real sense of realism and some real sense that it's important to those that are performing it. It's not just a story, it's more than that.
Oh, well, absolutely. Wow, how cool. Well, I will shoot you over this producer, Broadway producer's information when we later on today. So again, definitely we'll have links here on YouTube if you are viewing this on YouTube, as well as, of course, we will have our episodes page, which will have both the YouTube video, as well as links to all of the audio versions. So if you are listening to this on Apple podcast, iTunes, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and so forth. Be sure to check out OutBüro at outburo.com for the episode page. We'll be linking to those books where you can find out more information on them. And of course, Ray, as events unfold in and around this, would love for you to keep me directly informed, and would love to have you back to chat more about this, again, as events come forward. So what I'd like for folks to do is to take a few moments, and down in the comments below, please go ahead and share your thoughts about this, but also perhaps give a shout out to Netflix. Be sure to tag them with hashtag Netflix or the @ at Netflix, along with your comments and questions for Ray regarding his play, to hopefully bring, again, visibility. Perhaps we can help fast track this on the Netflix schedule. Well, Ray, this has been such a delight and an interesting conversation. I seriously, you're describing it just has made me want to see it, and hopefully that'll make our audience want to see and participate with this as well. You bring up a really great point. There are so many people within history that have done great things that also happen to be LGBTQ. And bringing information, bringing their stories to light, I think is so important. And you highlighting a key figure from your part of the world, I think is awesome. So looking forward to more people learning about Kath Duncan through your great work and your focus on her as a civil rights leader who's impacted the globe. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. I can't wait to hear it all.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for tuning in to this episode of OutBüro Voices. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and click that bell to ensure that you're notified when new episodes come available. And as mentioned, also, if you'd like to listen to these episodes on the go, although I love the facial expressions like this, be sure to follow us. And again, hit OutBüro. You're going to see episodes up at the top, and you're going to have direct access to the 14 different podcasting applications that we're on. You can even ask your Amazon Alexa to play OutBüro Voices, and she'll do it. Thank you so much. This is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. That's OutBuro.com. Bye-bye.